Welcome back, folks, to the Build It podcast. Our guest today is Jonathan Rednour, a visionary leader and entrepreneur who has made significant contributions to the world of football in the Gulf Coast region. Jonathan is the president and CEO of Crescent City Football Club, which he founded in 2015 and has been leading successfully for over 7 years, because that's basic math. Additionally, he serves as the vice president of operations for the Gulf Coast Premier League, which he co-founded in 2016. With his passion for football and his business acumen, who knew, Jonathan has been instrumental in promoting and developing football at both the grassroots and professional levels in the greater New Orleans area. His innovative ideas and dedication have earned him widespread recognition and respect in the industry. We also have John. There you go. So that's what ChatGPT can do for you. That's good.
Thank you. I love it. Could you do, Nick, could you do one for me for homework for our next pod, please?
Absolutely.
I love it.
I'll see what the crack is, but yeah, these are the new levels of professionalism we're reaching into.
I love it. Yes.
Hi, John.
Hey, what's up, Nick?
Okay.
Thanks for having me, guys.
No worries. Thank you for joining us. I encountered you on Twitter spasmodically, just saying in my world all the right things. I reached out to John and said, "Do you know this guy?" And he said, "Yeah, I've been speaking to him for ages." I was like, "Oh, for fuck's sake!" So thanks for joining us. It is going to be, as these things increasingly seem to be, just three middle-aged men shouting at the sky saying that soccer is broken in America and we're trying to fix it. So first off, Jonathan, is it Jonathan or John? I never really know with Jonathan.
Jonathan's fine. Yeah, Jonathan.
Jonathan. Okay, sweet. So, Johnny, just tell us a little bit about your story, how you ended up thinking that setting up a soccer club was a good idea, and whether or not you still think it was a good idea.
Yeah, that's the big question, right? Yeah, I guess it all started, once I grew up in New Orleans, outside of New Orleans, and I was, a basketball and American football kid. That's what I kind of grew up as. And it wasn't until high school that I really was truly introduced to the sport. A good friend of mine was a really good player and, kind of fell in love with it from there. 2008, I moved back home from San Francisco and my friend was like, "Hey, you want to come help me coach this, this high school team," which is our alma mater, East Jefferson High School. I went to go do it, and I just kind of fell in love with the whole, being involved and getting to learn it. And I kind of started to, increase my knowledge of the game. And then I started to really dive into trying to understand exactly, how the system works. One thing that I kept running into in Louisiana soccer was, especially the high school level, that kids would simply just hang up their boots when they were done playing after high school. High school was seen as the Mecca. And then I just tried to make sense of all that. And so once I did, 2009, 2010, started to dive in a little bit more, found the New Orleans Jesters, which was our local club, started to understand the league that they were in and just the level, and just kind of slowly but surely just started to realize that, we're not really tapping into, the potential that really we could if we were to put a little more emphasis on creating a grassroots approach to growing the game. 2012 was when I reached out to the now current president of GCPL, Jeremy Pokelimba, and I was just kind of berating him, saying like, "Hey man, can we create some type of U23 thing in Louisiana?" And slowly but surely, I was brought on to the Louisiana Soccer Association as the adult commissioner. We kind of created a state cup in 2013. In 2014, we started the Louisiana Premier League, and then that's kind of when I thought to myself, well, I tried to get involved with the Jesters. Unfortunately, it didn't work out. So I was like, I think I can actually create one of these clubs if I get enough people to support us. 2015, got it off the ground and was doing well. And I tried to partner up with a local group called the Louisiana Fire. And then when I did that, they were basically like, "Well, why don't you do that under the Louisiana Fire name?" which I did. Louisiana Fire joined the GCPL, and I coached that team for 2 seasons. And then, just basically kind of ended it there. And then that's when I kind of picked up the Crescent City football club again back in 2017 and 18. And then in 2019 is when I partnered up with a gentleman by the name of PJ Lynch, who was playing with the Matagua New Orleans group at the time, who I was kind of helping here and there with their U.S. Open Cup run. And we just kind of got it off the ground in 2019. And then, of course, COVID hit in 2020, kind of, sputtered some plans. And then after that, we joined the GCPL for 2021, and then slowly but surely been building. But yeah, the GCPL was something that we got off the ground in 2016 after the Louisiana Premier League had success, and we started to grow interest from a group out of Biloxi, Mississippi called Biloxi City FC that changed into Port City eventually, then AFC Mobile, and then the rest is pretty much history. I think we have it on our website if people want to follow up. But that's pretty much kind of where it is. And then today, getting a chance to meet individuals like John and a few others throughout the country, not only is it great to hear a different perspective on how their clubs are facing their challenges, which each region definitely has their own. It just offers a lot of insight on what they have done to improve themselves and what they're doing. And I think John, sings the same tune as me when it comes to, community club is where truly the grassroots level needs to start focusing on, to where we can actually start, building the pillars and growing those roots deep in the community. So therefore, 10 to 15 years from now, we are no longer needed because it is something that is taken off. There's other groups involved, and we're just showing up on Saturday or Sunday with a beer in our hands and enjoying, what we helped get off the ground. And I think that's, overall kind of what I'm hoping to do with Crescent City. So it's getting there, but there's a lot of challenges, but enjoying it so far. But I'll complain about it every day. Don't worry. My wife's tired of hearing me complaining about it.
Excellent. My favorite bit about all that, and there was a lot to unpick there, but my favorite bit is that I'm already getting the sense that I can just ask a question of one of you, and then I'll get 5 minutes to myself to go around and do my actual day job, and then we'll come back and I'll ask another question. Pretend I've been listening. It's great. My John. Your dealings with Jonathan. Hello. Your dealings with Jonathan and Crescent City and Gold Coast, both as on personal level, but also from the league perspective. What have been your learnings from their experiences?
Go ahead.
I'm sorry.
I think the GCPL and the Midwest Premier League actually very aligned. We did not compare operations manuals, but I think we both operate similarly. In that summer schedule, sort of a hybrid of college and some clubs that maybe a little less college players. I think everything, and I've talked to Jeremy as well that he mentioned. I think there's a lot of things that align with what we're doing with what they're doing. As part of the, as he mentioned, as part of the regional Premier Leagues alliance affiliation, I forget what we call ourselves, but that's been a huge benefit to talk to people like Jonathan and hey, this thing comes up, how do you deal with that? And we have a reference. You guys, the cool thing, Jonathan, you started a little before, but then you kind of got Crescent City started, and then within a year you were like, I'm going to start my own league kind of thing. And
right, exactly.
I guess I was accidentally involved with the same sort of process when we got the Midwest Premier League going. Before Nick falls asleep, when you and I nerd out on soccer politics, the branding of Crescent City, it's also on your website, because contrary to the belief, I do some research. I didn't know it was called the Crescent City until I looked at your website. How have you found your supporters in the community to identify with, that's what we are, that's a perfect name for us? Or has that been, you had to educate people there too?
Yeah, no, it's definitely, and I'm a big proponent to that of, if you're going to be a club for the community, and don't come out and just be like, we're City Elite Pro FC or something like that. It doesn't mean anything to the local community. And so Crescent City, we are the Crescent City. That's, one of the nicknames for New Orleans. I've always kind of fell in love with that, with that name. It just resonated with me. And then one of the things, and I probably should put this on the website, but one of the popular graphic designs or art designs that we have down here is the New Orleans Sewage and Water Board meter. So basically that's the crescent with the stars. It kind of resembles that, but there's a lot of local, boutique shops. They always have either a coaster with the New Orleans, Sewage and Water Board meter, or a doormat or something of that nature, where because it's just unique to us in New Orleans. So that's kind of how the logo design came up. And the colors, kind of represent more of a cooler nightshade of, how New Orleans is, laissez-faire. And so that, I think a lot of people have definitely resonated with that. A lot of people buy our merchandise. A lot of people give us compliments about, our branding and our name. And even with USL NOLA coming about, you kind of hear people chime in. You're like, oh, they should name themselves Crescent City Football Club or Soccer Club. And then somebody else will kind of come in and say, well, there's already a club named that, And so it's like, it's definitely, I think, very much so a community branding for sure. And, hopefully, as we continue to grow, we do a much better job of being a little more involved with, adding more and more New Orleans kind of unique flair to what we're doing. So, but yeah, for sure, Crescent City was something that a lot of people have definitely resonated with, and it's been very helpful for our growth for sure.
So you also, I think you and I had this talk maybe 10 days ago, maybe more, or maybe, I don't know, but you also recently brought on somebody to help with, I forget the title, community outreach director.
Yep.
Talk a little bit about that and what that, besides reading the press release,
Sure.
Talk about how that idea came about.
Yeah, sure. I mean, it's always been something with me personally. We set up Crescent City as a 501c3 because I wanted to be board driven, and our funding should come from more community efforts of whether we're doing a fundraiser or whether partners or sponsors are sponsoring us. Me personally, I think making money off of gate and concessions and selling merchandise is definitely a big thing that a lot of grassroots clubs should focus on. But we haven't really been as true to our mission in the early years of building a board of individuals who are representing not only soccer, football, but also the community of New Orleans. So Lowry, who we just recently brought on, Lowry Cruz, he has an organization called 18th Ward Sports Club, and basically their mission is very much so getting into the nooks and crannies of New Orleans and the neighborhoods and mostly inner city kids, and providing some type of outlet, after school programs, in school programs, things like that. And it's, for all sports, but he's a big soccer fan. And, we had a chance to work with him last year. I've had a chance to speak to him a few times. And I think, what he personally is looking to do with 18th Ward, I think it aligns a lot with what Crescent City is trying to do. And so 18th Ward, being more so focused on the younger kids, teenage age kids and down, and we're kind of more focused on the older age kids and adults and things like that. I think it definitely aligns, and he's very much so committed to utilizing Crescent City and really building out something that we definitely put a stamp on our community involvement into New Orleans, and that's why I personally was very happy to bring him on, because I do feel as though that he has a much better understanding with that, and that is something that we truly needed to improve on for sure.
So in again, I think our seasons align. You guys are, Crescent City only plays in the summer, correct? You don't play
for now. Yeah, correct.
Okay, so good for now. What's the next growth step then? You add the community outreach. What's the next step for Crescent City?
Yeah, for sure. Building
years.
building out the board. Building out the board is something that I'm still working on. There's a lot of individuals that actually reached out to us after I sent out that kind of presidential statement, I guess you would say, asking how they can get involved. And I actually have a few meetings this week with some people, so that's a really good step. But definitely the footballing aspect. And I've reached out to a local youth club here, trying to work out some type of competitive partnership, because they do have a stronghold on the competitive outlook for New Orleans, and they're tied into the Louisiana TDP MLS Next program as well. And so I feel as though that would be the natural progression, is to kind of work with them. But yeah, improving our footballing development and things like that, being more available and inclusive to players that are looking to take on the next stage of football. I have one of my personal beliefs is that I do not think that the U19 game should be considered youth. I do not like seeing U19 and USYS, regionals or nationals. I just do not think that U19 is a youth level, and it shouldn't be treated as such. And then one thing that we run to here in Louisiana is, again, high school is seen as a mecca. So these kids, they don't see anything beyond that, so they hang up their boots. But also the club play that they play in, it's very laissez-faire when it comes to the competition. Yeah, you might come across a U19 team that's strong, so they're putting forth a little more effort. But these kids would much rather go to their oh, I have to go to prom or I have to go do this and this and that. Not to say kids shouldn't, but, there's a lot of excuses of why they can't participate with their club. And I do feel as though that it's really nothing there for them to be excited about. So what GCPL is hoping to do, where Crescent City will fold into this, is that we're looking to create a U19 division that will take place during the fall, but it'll be all of our senior clubs basically putting forth the effort to kind of play into that. So basically we're grooming these kids into becoming GCPL players, or, obviously helping them get into college. And I think a lot of the local colleges around the Gulf South that we've reached out to and spoken with would love to have something like that, so where they can actually monitor and keep an eye on it. And they're, it's something that they feel would be more beneficial than having to, figure out if they can make it to regionals, or if they can, or if they can't, if they haven't heard about a kid. And a lot of these college coaches are truthful. They're like, man, if we don't get, the video and constant communication, we're really not going to follow up on that kid and this and that. So, hopefully the GCPO, we can kind of create something that makes it a little more accessible for the college coaches to follow, but also gives a little bit more meaning behind the U19 level. And I'm saying all of this to kind of come to say that Crescent City will be looking to put a U19 team in. And that's kind of where I feel as though during the off season of GCPL, where Crescent City can kind of continue on developing and building out the footballing aspect of our club, which hopefully, is something that we can kind of slowly but surely grow into a very strong senior program, to where we can participate in U.S. Open Cup qualifiers and be competitive. Or if we do qualify for U.S. Open Cup, we're not getting slammed by USL2 or MPSL club. We're competing with them, so that's the goal.
That's interesting. I've never thought about when we've had our reserve team, it's all been in the summertime. I've never thought about having a reserve team that played essentially in the off season to then be more fit for tryouts for the next,
yes.
And part of, I don't know, I think some of the, all the guys that are in college are playing in the fall, and it creates a little bit of a headache. It's interesting. Are you also the president, marketing guy, technical director, sporting director, physio? You are all things Crescent City. I mean, I know you're building out the board, but right now you have to look at the footballing. You have to look at tickets. You have to look at all of it yourself, kind of right now.
Yep. Graphic designer, everything. The only thing that I am not currently is the director of community outreach. That is the only thing that I am not at the moment. It's unfortunate. It's unfortunate for sure. And I know that you've dealt with this, and a lot of club owners do, or club, presidents or GMs and things like that. It's definitely, at the end of the day, if the person that you've entrusted to do something doesn't get it done, it still falls on your lap. So at the end of the day, you're still making sure that it's getting done. So while there may be some people helping here and there, ultimately it's still us overseeing it, right? And that's kind of I don't think a lot of people realize that it usually falls on one person to keep things floating for a lot of these amateur clubs.
Oh yeah, well, and there isn't enough money in it to really pay more than some small stipends if you wanted to. It's really, a lot of these clubs, it's a passion project, unless somebody's got silly money that they just want to get rid of. And I'm sure you'd be willing to cash some of those checks, and so would I if those people are out there. But I think it's a difficult thing.
And that's the rat race, right? Because what we're trying to build, and we've had this discussion many times, with Midwestern Premier League and GCPL, is that we're trying to show that the regional model is much better for clubs like ours, for DeKalb and for Crescent City. Because if we were to jump into USL2 or MPSL, I mean, we're having to keep up with the Joneses, is like what I like to call it. And it's, you're out there all of a sudden having to create $100,000 plus budget annually, when really, you need to see if it works first, because you don't have that type of cash personally to splash towards that. So, creating a $30,000 to $60,000 budget is kind of where you would like to be comfortably. And so that's why I kind of feel as though, the rat race is, we're trying to build some type of proof of concept for clubs to look at us and say, well, damn, we should definitely look into building our club there first before we look at the bigger picture. But, I do feel as though that unfortunately there's a lot of club owners and a lot of coaches that are so fixated on path to pro. That whole, I very strongly dislike that whole rhetoric of path to pro, because simply, people look at it as like, oh, we're creating an organization that is going to create professional football players. And at the end of the day, it's like, you're trying to create an organization that's going to be sustainable so it can stick around for quite some time. So eventually, yes, it does become an organization that does create professional football players. I mean, that's how I look at it. I mean, I think we're about 20 years behind, or shall I say 20 years, in the making of that actually becoming something that, Crescent City could comfortably say, like, oh, we are definitely a club where you're going to get your full professional, experience here. Yeah, while we'll be able to, do some professional aspects to make players feel like they're, getting prepped and ready. To sit there and truly say that you're a club that's churning out professional players and doing so to where you're benefiting from it and in any monetary sense or things like that. I mean, I just think a lot of these clubs are dreaming when it comes to that. So again, the whole proof of concept with regional is like, yeah, we're not going to sit here and say that we're path to pro, even though we kind of are. But I'd much rather clubs be focused on path to community, something about more sustainability, being, growing those roots first before sitting there and saying that you're churning out pro players.
So one of the things too that I noticed on your website, and I've kind of wondered why we haven't had this discussion more, all of us, is you refer to Crescent City as a minor league football club.
Mm-hmm.
And I've, as much as we want to say non-league or elite amateur or whatever BS we come up with, the community that we serve in most cases understands what major league and minor league are. It's America.
Yes.
Whether we like it or not, people understand minor league is a step below major league, right? So, obviously people get pissed about semi-pro and all this, like it really doesn't matter. I say semi-pro in our community because people understand what that is.
Right.
If I say, hey, we're an amateur soccer team, that sounds like you're a rec soccer team.
Yep.
No, we're a high-level amateur soccer club in the American system that doesn't exist. It just doesn't.
Right.
So I'm not so fixated on what we call ourselves, other than we should collectively pick a term that makes sense to the people we're trying to serve.
Right.
But I'm curious what your reasoning is on minor league instead of semi-pro or non-league or whatever.
Yeah, it originally said semi-professional because I was, sold on the idea that we were semi-pro. But as I kind of got a chance to dive a little bit more into understanding how semi-professional is treated, and I always kind of look at, places like England, how their system is set up, and the Bundesliga and Germany. I always kind of look and see how they have things set up. And it's funny because if you're saying semi-pro, you're basically saying that you're somewhat paying players somewhere, some way, shape, or form. You're paying players, or they're being taken care of. Some are, some aren't. And then I kind of started looking at the levels, let's just say use England, for example. Now, you can go into the National League, Vanarama National League, and people don't realize that, that is the true National League. And those clubs are operating at $1 million+ budget, annually. You start moving on down the line and you start to realize that, man, semi-pro goes pretty far down, but these clubs are operating at a truly, decent operating budget compared to what we are. And so for me, it was just like, well, man, are we truly semi-professional? Are we truly treating this like we don't have our own grounds? We don't have our own training grounds. When it comes to players, there's nobody on contract. There's some type of little, agreement that they sign at the beginning of each season, but there's no long contract. I'm not paying any of these guys. So really, truly, it isn't semi-professional. And then you kind of start thinking about the other words to use, like you said, non-league or elite amateur or whatever it is. It just doesn't really mean anything to, people that aren't really that involved with soccer. And so minor league just seemed to be the better terminology. And to be honest with you, I think I might have gotten it from you a long time ago when we had a chat, because, yeah, you were the one that kind of, said that it really, and it truly doesn't. And I think, and it's funny, I hear this from a few of the USL2 owners, and they kind of talk about, like, it really doesn't matter the acronym league that you're in, NPSL, USL, this and that. They don't care. They just want to show up to a game and just be, however you present the game to be and however it is on the field, they will make their, their judgment, their, what they feel that environment is for them. So truly, it does not matter. It's just, when you get people out there, that's the only thing, is once you get them out there, now you got to show them what you're all about. And so minor league, major league, pro, whatever it is, I just didn't want to lie to anybody. We're minor league. So that's why I kind of chose that.
So I'm looking at USL League 2 right now. It says it's a semi-professional developmental soccer league. Okay.
Right.
I don't know. I don't know if it's semi-pro.
I think Des Moines. Well, I think Des Moines Menace. I mean, Des Moines Menace. You look at a club like that. There are some pro teams, if I'm not mistaken, because in USL2's operation manual, they definitely talk about professional players and length, as if there are clubs within USL2 that are using professional players. I mean, I would have to think that some of those clubs, to be that good, to be that competitive on the field, year in and year out, they have to be doing something. I don't know if it's paying players. I don't know if it's off, like whatever it is. They're taking care of them in a sense to where they're getting some of these top guys. I wouldn't say their whole league is semi-professional.
No, and it's just interesting. Again, it's all nomenclature. It means nothing, but
true. I agree with you. Yeah.
But it does mean something when all of us are fighting within our community, whatever that is. If it's 5,000 or 50,000 or 100,000,
right?
We're trying to educate the marketplace on what this sport is and what level we play, and that it does matter. It does matter when you and I are out hustling, trying to talk to a partner and explain what we are, and they've never been to a game and they don't know what the experience is like. It would be nice, is all I'm saying, if it was outlined. This is what you are based on the league you're in or whatever. Obviously, that's a USASA thing, which I want to get to anyway. So it's kind of a good segue.
Yep.
But real quick, GCPL, give me the overview again. Summer League, how many clubs do you have? Multiple divisions, geography a little bit. Give me that little rundown real quick.
Yeah, sure. So currently, I'll kind of just give you what 2023 is set up as. So currently we have a West Conference, Central Conference, and East Conference for the men's GCPL division. Each division will have 6 teams. Everybody will play 10 games. And then from there, we'll take the top 2 into a 6-team playoff. The top 2 out of that ranking will host the semifinals. The other 4 will meet in the quarterfinals. And then everybody will meet in Foley, Alabama on July 29th for a neutral site for the GCPL Cup. And then the women's side will have a West and East Conference. The goal is to be at 6 clubs in each. Currently, we're at 11. And the same thing, they'll basically play all their 10 games, and the top 2 will go into a semifinal. The final will be at, Foley, just like I said. And then we also have Gulf Coast League 2, which we're still trying to format right now. Gulf Coast League 2 is a very, come into this regional model, the restrictions. You don't have to have a, facility with locker rooms. You don't have to do, a few other things, but it's more so for them to start getting used to that travel, the, meeting some requirements and things like that. And take, we do require that they have a website and social media, so they have to be active on those things. It's kind of more of a step into what the GCPL is. So we'll probably have, hopefully this year, we'll have 10 clubs for that. So the top GCPL men's will be 18, the women 12, and then that will be 10. And then of course, I think I've mentioned this before, there's ambitions for the Texas and Oklahoma, Arkansas, all that. There's growth going on in those regions as well.
Yeah, I think it's cool how the 7 regional Premier Leagues, we've talked about this on our calls with the maps, and how do we fill out the map so there's a regional option everywhere across the lower 48. And I think we've talked about even beyond that, but it's interesting. Now, are you, I think you told me that you are involved with USASA now down in your region as far as the Amateur Cup a little bit?
Yeah, National Amateur Cup. Yeah, the Region 3 representative, which I missed the meeting last night because it's at 8 p.m. Eastern and not Central. So,
got it.
No, but it was just a meeting to kind of talk about the like solidifying the format for this year, and it's been kind of a race to kind of get it done, because it's been the committee was put together so late. I think Fritz has done a really good job. Fritz Marth has done a really good job of at least getting 2023 solidified, done, and off the ground, so we can have that tournament, and then obviously put more emphasis on improving the 2024 National Amateur Cup. But this year, I think Fritz has done a really good job of getting it off the ground.
So one of the things I know Nick's probably sleeping, but one of the things that we've talked about in many of our calls with the rest of the regional leagues was the idea of the national champion and the allure of that to some clubs that want to see that national opportunity. What are your thoughts on the Amateur Cup filling that role, sort of?
Yeah, no, I think we have the U.S. Open Cup, obviously, which includes everybody, and then National Amateur Cup. I kind of look at it as like the FA Trophy. competition that they have in England, where it's just mostly the amateur semi-pro clubs, and the winner gets a chance to play at Wembley, or the finalists get a chance to play at Wembley, which I think is a really cool thing for amateur and semi-pro players. So I think, for the National Amateur Cup, we should be thinking along those lines of, if we want this to be the prestigious amateur cup where we are involving everybody, not just USASA members, but, we're involving everybody. I think, there is a lot of potential to make it really great. So I do feel as though that should be the only national amateur cup that there is. When it comes to a national league in the U.S., I think I've said this many times publicly. It's just very difficult to wrap my head around, to sit there and ask a club from Seattle to go travel to Miami for a national amateur cup. And then, the following year, you can see that club from Seattle, not existing anymore because they put forth $50,000 to get to where they need. I'll start rambling on this. So I'll stop there. But I do feel as though the National Amateur Cup is probably the one where we should be putting most of our emphasis on when it comes to a true national amateur competition that's inclusive of all amateur leagues all across the board.
Yeah,
that's my personal opinion.
We get into some dirty political discussions with the USASA hosted event and then leagues that are not affiliated, and
right,
it can get a little bit muddy. So yeah,
sure.
I think I love what you guys are doing on there. I think there's a lot of parallels with what we're trying to do, and I certainly think the more we collaborate as clubs and as leagues, the better it's all going to get. I don't know where we ever gain the actual political influence to make it better, but having people like you step up and join a committee. And by the time this comes out, we'll have a new executive director of the USASA. So we'll see what that leadership change looks like, what kind of impact that person can have. But I think there's enough of us that are, I would say, young and energetic, middle-aged and energetic, that are actually living the fight every day. I think like we know what it takes to move the needle for the players and the clubs and the leagues, because like you're doing, you have to listen to the players' feedback and the fans' feedback, and you as a club representative, you have that impact with your league. I think there's a lot of different things that we're trying to solve at the same time that I think the governing bodies would do well to, offer us the chance to
resources,
localize those things.
Yeah, definitely. And just the resources in general. I mean, that's the biggest thing. I just feel as though that, we're heading into a new, been saying this for a few years now, but I mean, the landscape has changed of what amateur soccer is. And, that semi-pro level is slowly but surely being created. And, there's a huge gap between Division III, U.S. Soccer's PLS Division III, and let's just say USL 2 is considered the top of the amateur leagues. I mean, there's still a pretty big gap in between that. There is no buffer. Teams that have to make that jump from USL 2 into, let's just say, USL 1. I mean, they're still jumping through a lot of hoops, and there's a lot of thin ice that they have to walk on to get it done. Now, luckily, USL is a great organization that has a really good onboarding process, and they do a lot of good work to kind of get those clubs prepped and ready. But that is the danger of not having a connected system, is that it's a lot of trust that you're going to be able to make that jump from amateur of what it is today to Division III pro. It's a big jump. So I agree with you on this. I think it would be very, very great and beneficial overall for everybody if those organizations that kind of sat in that power was open their ears a little bit more and offered a little more resources for us to do our job.
Yeah, I think we could do well too to support from the bottom, right? And it's got to be a two-way street, all the way through. So you've got this sounds a little familiar. You've got a lot of different things on your plate, right? You've got clubs,
right.
You're actually building a roster. You're doing graphic design all the way up to writing league operations manuals.
Right. Yep.
Like what's if you could get one thing done 100% in 23, what's the priority here?
I mean, the one thing that I would love to get done is that at the end of the GCPL season, everybody sends in their letter of intent to return next season. That would be the accomplishment for me, and that's including Crescent City Football Club. That would be a huge accomplishment to continue to kind of work towards that retention rate being as close to 100% as possible, because that's where I feel as though that's where the familiarity starts to come in with clubs knowing each other and working with each other. And so they're not seeing each other as competitors anymore. They're seeing that they're in this race together. Yes, they're competitors on the field, but off the field, they're all, trying to help build this up as well. I would probably say that would be the biggest accomplishment for me personally. But let's just kind of separate and say for, Crescent City, I would love to come out of the end of the season, obviously operating in the black as close as possible. And then have at least 5+ people that are just as dedicated as I am, towards the mission and doing their part to pull the weight. And I think that would be a very, very strong statement to our growth, is to definitely grow in that direction for sure.
Well, the fact that your club has been around as Crescent City, right, for 7,
2015, yeah, right.
I mean, that alone, and survive a pandemic. I mean, that certainly is a testament to your dedication, especially if you're mostly the lone soldier there. I think there's lots to be proud of, and your ambition to get on these other committees and do all this other stuff. I mean, you're either insane or an angel, or maybe
have a lot of time on my hands. For sure. Yeah. What's
Hello,
so let me ask you a question, John, if you don't mind.
Oh,
Nick,
go ahead,
Nick.
No,
Nick,
we're talking.
No, your questions are going to be better than mine. Go crack on.
The tier system. Let's hear your thoughts on that. You have been selected to be on this committee with USASA. Am I correct?
Yeah. So allegedly, I've been added to the list for the task force to build out the subsequent tiers other than tier 1 within USASA. I have not been invited to a Zoom call yet. Nothing is scheduled. I followed up a couple of times over the last few months. I did speak with the new executive director this morning and mentioned that as one of the things that kind of just went awry. And so as that person's onboarding themselves a little bit, I hope that's one of the items that we can start to check off. I truthfully don't have as big a problem with a tiered system as maybe others do. I do have a problem with one tier. I think that
sure. Yep.
I don't mind playing in a system if it's a defined system, because if I don't like it and the tiers are linked in some way, which I think is very doable, I think then we can, I think as you're doing with GCPL2, you're creating a pathway to pro for a club. So you can start as a rec team and join someday GCPL4,
right,
and work your way up to full GCPL. So I think that like having that structure is a fine thing. I think the way they did it was missing 1 or 2 sentences that said something like, this is the beginning of us building a system to allow growth for clubs in more communities across the country, and we look forward to developing what that structure looks like. Right. I think if they would have said that, it would have helped. But the way the announcement came out was hey, they're tier 1, no mention of everyone else. It was just so I think the PR on it was actually just the worst part of it. And I still am, even though I'm leaving my post with the Midwest Premier League formally, I still hope to, sort of champion that discussion, because I'm okay with there being somebody else being tier 1, tier 2, tier 3. I don't care if we're tier 65. Just show me what the path looks like.
Right. Exactly. That's, I think we've had this discussion many a times where it's just like, just tell me where we need to be. We'll go there, but everybody else has to fall in line. Don't say we need to go there, and then all of a sudden they're not going there, and I think that's the biggest thing where I have, just a little bit of beef with the tier system. I get what they're trying to do. I understand it. I too am a big fan of the tier system, as I do feel as though that we need it. But yeah, the fact that it was done with no legwork done, it just seemed like it was something that was done. It was a reactionary press release to, an organization leaving and another organization saying that they're creating X, Y, and Z. And so, and then I don't know, it's just it didn't seem like it was for, the benefit of everybody. I think it was only the benefit for a few, and that's probably the biggest beef I had with that announcement. But having somebody like yourself on the task force, I really have feel a little more at ease knowing that, hey, we'll have a voice within the system and somebody that knows obviously what the regional model, what benefit it brings to the overall landscape of everything is, that's a huge voice to have in that room for sure. So,
well, we'll see if I ever get in the room, and we'll see if I actually have. I can speak plenty, but will I be heard? I don't know. We'll just
right.
We'll see. I think it's an exciting time that there's something, right? It's not just the status quo. And sometimes you gotta, I don't know. There's a slogan, right? You gotta shake a few trees or break a few knees or something. I don't know, but we're going to cause some trouble and make it better. We're going to have to do something different, and not everybody's going to like every decision. So,
that's right.
I do applaud them for at least trying something. I would like to see the next step of it, but we'll see. I think it's an important thing that we remember. Ultimately, what league you play in, aside from just being a good business partner, doesn't matter to your fans. It will matter to players in terms of recruitment, but you said it a half hour ago. It's about getting them to the match and making memories and taking pictures and bringing their neighbors back next week, regardless of what league you're in. All this politics, to be honest, just takes away from what we should be focusing on. So that's why I'm not throwing a fit that, hey, we have to have meetings, because ultimately it's going to take away from my club, my real job, my family, all that. So it's fine. But I think we stick to giving our fans a good experience, giving our players the best experience we can, and stay true to your own values and your mission within your club, and then let the rest of it just be noise.
Well, that's grassroots football. That to me is a definition of what we're trying to build. Is that, look, we're not going to be able to sit here and play in a stadium of 70,000 people, but can we create memories with at least 2,000 people that can sit there and say, oh man, I had such a great time going out there. I had a great time playing with them. Whatever it may be, it introduces them to the game and the spirit of it. I think that is, if we're inclusive enough to allow each community to build that without, having this gatekeeping going on, I'll dive into this a little bit, but I think that truly starts to unlock the potential to really start tapping into more potential, professional players and international players, if we were to truly build those pillars. But I mean, again, I think right now everything is so, everybody's pulling in different directions, and the whole tier thing with USASA, it just kind of, to me, it missed the mark, because it's, they're claiming that it's a tier one, but they're not putting out a plan to kind of talk about, well, how does that connect to the lowest bottom, that there is, so they can be involved with it. Otherwise, all it's doing is saying, oh, they're tier one. Well, we have to go to this league, and the league is going to turn around and say, you're going to pay this premium for it. And then, I mean, again, what is that really doing? So, we just got to keep going at it. John, me and you will be seeing each other quite a lot over the next couple of years, I'm sure. So, get used to this beautiful mug.
Yeah. It was like looking in a mirror.
Yeah, exactly. For sure. Nick, you had a question for us?
I'm still here. It's all right. I was just typing you guys a message. It's been like, back in the good old days of COVID, when we were all locked down, and people used to just sort of watch video casts all the time. Oh, you got an interloper. It's like I just paid like $10 for you two just to talk at me for an hour. It was wonderful. But anyway, I don't want to derail it in any way, but one thing I was struck by from the two of you talking was there was an awful lot of talk about players, and you have just kind of pulled it back with talk about the fans and the community and everything else. But John, you always say that the community will dictate where the club plays, right? Whether that's MLS or down the road in Sycamore. But for all the talk of pathway to pro, and whether we should be non-league and what tier we should be in, and whatever else, no one seems to be thinking about how to just engage the community. If you can get 10,000 people into your community stadium, A, good luck, but B, that has a knock-on effect on the next community down the road and the next community down the road after that. That's, to me, that's a thing that so many clubs overlook. Like, by all means, try and create the next Lionel Messi and go and win the World Cup and crack on with that. But the culture of being a soccer fan, of being a football family, of kids inheriting your club because their dad took them to the match when they were 8, that isn't here yet. And until that's here, and it's probably not here because the clubs weren't here, but until that's here, clubs are just going to come and go and die and be rebuilt, and nothing's really going to change, because the cream of the players will always rise to the top. You'll always get 1 or 2 world-class players, and you'll always have the argument about whether they should play in this sport or that sport and all the youth coaching stuff. But you're not getting through to middle America, who is going to keep the game alive.
Right. And that's the biggest thing, is the average sports fan. And, John, we've had this discussion before, the average sports fan, and I'm not even saying the average soccer fan, the average sports fan. I mean, they do not know anything about the sport when it comes to, the details of it and the intricacies. And, for them, they're just looking for something that they can feel a part of. And so these pathways of creating a grassroots organization that's more community driven and focusing on that first, well, that starts to intrigue the average sports fan to kind of start paying attention to it, to where, their kid is going with them to the games, and the memory of that kid is going there with his father and his mom or his, siblings, and having a great time. And so therefore he falls in love with the sport for other reasons other than, his mom or dad just paying a premium for him to play at a club. He's falling in love with the sport for a completely different reason. So therefore, when he does go to play, and if he's truly passionate about it, it's a different mentality. And then let's talk about including, communities that unfortunately can't pay a premium for their kids to play. And how the community club can start enforcing some type of scholarship system or something to where they're getting involved. I mean, I talk about this all the time, being a basketball kid growing up. A group of friend of mine in the early, 90s, we were the top suburban kids around Metairie is where I kind of grew up. And when it came to basketball, our age group, like, we didn't really find any suburban kids that can kind of match us. So we kind of decided to go out into the parks in the city. Completely different ball game. Those guys are playing the game for a completely different reason than we were. They were hungry. They were trying to get out of somewhere, where we were just doing it for fun, for shits and giggles. That passion, that is a completely different animal that you're tapping into when you have a kid that is out there staying an hour after practice or an hour after playing with his friends and working on layups for the whole hour. That is somebody that has a completely different mindset. So all of a sudden you start tapping into that for soccer. You start having a kid, sit there and say, I need to get out of this situation. I want my mom to have a better life, or I want my family to have a better life. And I have the ability to do that. I mean, that type of drive, that type of player, there's not many American players like that. And I think that is the biggest difference between us on the international stage with a lot of these other countries, is that, those guys grow up with the ball at their feet for different reasons than we do. And that is where the passion truly comes in. But they also have access to a lot of community clubs. They have access to, you're talking about a lot of these clubs right now. A kid can go play 7v7 or 6v6 for the first 5 years of their life before they get brought up to the next club, which is, the 11v11, right? Like, it's just, the list can go on of, the accessibility of the sport outside of America or the United States, shall I say. And that's where I think the community aspect truly comes in, is because you're not trying to tap into building professional players. You're tapping into simply start creating a club that can truly tap into the most, integral parts of the community and using that to elevate itself. Right. And so I know I went on a rant there. I apologize, but I'm with you, Nick, 100% on that. It is definitely, that's where the passion needs to be for me.
There's a lot of problems to solve at the same time.
Yeah, for sure.
One of the problems we have to solve now is childcare, I believe. So I'm happy to keep this going, but at least one of you, I believe, has a child that is currently walking the streets because his father has neglected him. So Jonathan, thank you so much for your time. I'm pretty sure we will have you on again because I feel like we haven't even got 1% of. I might just rebrand it as the John and John Show and just record it.
Hey, I'd love to join. I'd love to join for sure. Me and John can talk all day.
I hear you, but given the pitfalls of trying to get you on this thing in the first place today, I'm loath to invite you back. Really?
Yeah, don't rely on me to show up weekly.
No, Jesus. Thank you so much for your time. It's been a pleasure. It's been illuminating. It's been nice just sitting here and listening to you two shout at the clouds. And we hope to have you back someday. Thank you both for your time.
I appreciate it.
Thanks, Jonathan. Good to see you, man.